Black Mirror, the Netflix show that has taken the internet by storm by holding up a twisted mirror, pun intended, of the potential dark future that technology has in store for us. Season 7 just dropped on the 10th of April, and I spent Friday night binging the entire season because this show holds a special place in my heart ever since I saw the twist in Season 3's playtest. If you know, you know. I actually resubscribed to Netflix specifically to watch this show. Today, I'll be making a tier list of each of the 6 episodes of the season based on the story, the twist, and the tech. So if I missed anything or you have a different opinion, put a comment down below and I will definitely reply. So let's get into Season 7 of Black Mirror. So right here we have a tier list of all 6 episodes. We have Common People, Bête Noire, Hotel Reverie, Playthings, Eulogy, and USS Callister into Infinity. So without further ado, I'm going to make a spoiler and non-spoiler sections for each episode because I'll be talking a bit about the story, and I'll include that in the timeline down below. So I should also explain my rating for the system. S tier is I will yell it to the masses. You should definitely watch this episode. I would rewatch it multiple times. A tier is I would definitely rewatch it. May not shout it to the masses, but if someone talks about it, I will talk about it back, and I would love to holler about this episode to anyone who listens. B is just good TV. Not necessarily willing to rewatch it, but it's a good show. It's a good watch. I did not waste my time. C, I watched it. I would not rewatch it. It didn't necessarily waste my time, but I felt it unfulfilling as an episode. And D would be I did not care for it at all. So if at any point, if you want to skip ahead, please do so. I don't want to waste your time. And so without further ado, let's dive right on in to our first episode, Common People. Okay, so to start us off, Common People has 2 main characters. We have Mike, played by Chris Dowd, and Amanda, played by Rashida Jones, who you might know from The Office. At least that's where I know her from. And they both nailed their roles in this as well as a loving couple. They're both husband and wife. Amanda works as a teacher, and Mike works as a manual laborer at a construction factory. They're trying for a baby, and every year for their anniversary, they go off to a cottage/hotel/restaurant for a romantic getaway. Now, they're just living their normal life until Amanda, during class at one point, falls down, and it's discovered that she has a tumor in her brain. Now, luckily for them, there is a new startup company that the doctors don't recommend, but Mike is desperate, so he asks them to operate. Surgery's free, and the company, Rivermind, essentially replaces the tumor with a backup of Amanda's personality and some sort of biotech neural matrix that fills that space and can be connected to their servers in the county area for her to live her life as normal. However, Rivermind is a subscription service, and this episode explores the question of what if Amazon, Netflix, all the others charged you for a subscription on something that you cannot do without. That's right, the life of a loved one. So Amanda's fine, but they have to pay $300 a month for her to stay that way. And of course, Rivermind starts to take advantage of their customers. The base level that they're at first with $300, start adding ads. In fact, Amanda during class starts spewing advertisements to the kids. This gets the parents mad at her, of course, and she doesn't remember the advertisements when they happen. They talk to Rivermind about that, and they learn that there's a new tier which does not come with ads. Now, just on a baseline, I found this very ironic that the Netflix show Black Mirror, the first episode, talks about subscription services and advertisements, because that's what Netflix and Amazon Prime have started to do. The base level with access to their catalog now comes with advertisements just like cable. And you have to pay more for no ads. So it's kind of like reality, and that's kind of scary if ever like biological medicine gets to that point. God forbid that this whole scenario ever plays out for real people, but that's what's happening in the show, and the company starts charging more and more. There's 3 levels of subscription services. The base level, which has more ads, and you sleep for up to 16 hours a day. The second level, which is extra $500 a month for $800, but there's no ads. And the Luxe version that they added, which allows you to calibrate your senses for, pleasure or peace of mind, what have you. You can even learn skills that come from other Rivermind users when they're sleeping. hence why they sleep a lot. Now, this causes a whole series of problems because, first of all, it's expensive and they don't have that much money. In fact, they were trying for a baby. And Mike, seeing that, of course, you can't just not pay, your loved one depends on it, has to do some interesting things, which I'll get into in the spoiler section. But what I love about this first episode is it feels so real. You can feel the love between the characters and the absolute lack of sympathy that Rivermind as a company has. And Tracy Ellis Ross, who plays the Rivermind representative, does a great job at acting that, that fake personal touch that a lot of people do when they deal with customer service. That, but pushed to an extent where you're talking about human lives and it's still so impersonal. So yeah, just off that, I really enjoyed the episode. I'd highly recommend checking it out. However, we'll get into this into the spoiler section. It gets into some nasty territory. So self-harm or grief, those are some triggers for the spoiler section, which we'll get into now. Spoiler warning for the rest of you, and I'll include the timestamp to skip to down below. In order to pay for all this, Mike learns from one of his colleagues that there's a online site that you can do things to yourself and people will pay to see it. Things that can include, just drinking your own bodily fluids, or that can escalate to self-harm, so just pulling out your teeth, putting mouse traps in certain parts of your body, and people pay for that. And Mike starts doing this in order to support the cost of living of his wife, Amanda, because of course he loves her and wants her to live her life without having to spew ads every 5 minutes. And this hit me hard. Like, it shows to what extent are you willing to go for someone you love. And that becomes especially true when their anniversary rolls around, and then Mike wants to find the money to reward Amanda and give her the experience of pure pleasure for the weekend. And that's what happens, but he has to, in that case, pull off his mask during a live stream for $500. And in doing so, the people at his work suddenly realize that he's part of these people who do it, and they have a picture, they staple it to the wall. He gets really mad at his colleague for posting this everywhere, and the colleague accidentally dies. That was a big shock to me. I did not see that coming at all. Of course, Mike loses his job, and now they're without money. You can't revert to a lower plan with ads because then Amanda will start saying ads to children, and that's not going to happen. And so the ending is very sad, where they essentially pay for, I think, 5 or 15 minutes of Lux, and Amanda's able to live in bliss for 5 minutes where they discuss ending her life afterwards. And that's what they do. Mike holds a pillow over her head while she starts going back on the constant ad period because she doesn't remember what happens when she's saying ads, and Amanda dies. So yeah, with all that said, I really enjoyed this first episode. It's very dark, so content warning for you. But it dealt with the question of, first of all, subscription services being a capitalistic nightmare, right? But also, how far are you willing to go to save the ones you love? Combining the two together, I think they did an excellent job. I'm putting it in S tier. Okay, and that brings us to episode 2, Bête Noire, which in French means black beast. And there is a black beast in this episode. We have our main character, Maria, played by Sienna Kelly, who is just living her normal life. She has a boyfriend. She works in the food industry as a food Imagineer, where she comes up with new recipes for their candy factory or candy company. Things start to take a turn, however, when a person that she knew from her past comes into the office and applies for a job, Verity. And you can tell immediately that they have some history together. You're not sure what it is at first. Now, at this point in the episode, I started to really enjoy the back and forth between Verity and Maria. You don't quite know what the crux of their issue is, but you sense the tension there. And then the weird stuff happens. Things that Maria could have sworn on, be it the name of the company that her boyfriend used to work for, which I actually rewinded the episode to see if I was being messed with, because the name of the baseball cap changes. And that was messy. At first, it starts with just computer stuff, right? Like something in an email that she swore she changed because she had to adjust a typo in it, ends up not being there. Things that she Google searches due to a fight with Verity end up not being what she thinks it is. So much so that at one point, nut allergy does not exist. And at that point in the episode, I'm questioning reality. I'm very curious about what is going on. And if you like that kind of increase in tension, increase in kind of confusion, but also a peak in your own curiosity, Bête Noire was very good for that. Now, would I recommend it? I'd say this is probably one of the lower ones, if not the lowest, among the episodes in season 7, purely because of the ending, which I'll get into in the spoiler section, but all to say it was very unsatisfactory, and I didn't really see it ever coming to be in terms of a tech side. But yeah, we'll talk about it now. So, turns out Verity, computer whiz, right? We learned that at the very beginning, and turns out she has her own mansion with a bunch of servers, and Maria, after her life gets basically ruined, she loses her job after a conflict with Verity, and she goes to Verity's house to investigate. She gets caught by Verity, and she realizes that this little necklace that Verity has allows Verity to change reality to be whatever she speaks into it using quantum magic. And yeah, the whole episode ends with a confrontation where Verity summons police here. Then Verity gets shot in the head, falls to the ground, and this is another plot point which I'm kind of frustrated at when I saw it. Maria's able to go up, crawl along the floor. She's shooting at the police are shooting back, get the thumbprint of Verity because it was like finger locked. That's why Maria couldn't use it when she grabbed hold of it. And she touches the finger lock, and says, I want it to work for me. Why didn't Verity just make it voice activated? You know? So for me, another major plot hole is towards the end of the episode when there's a confrontation between Verity and Maria. Maria investigates Verity and realizes that the little necklace she has can change the fabric of reality and shift the current universe into an alternate reality where whatever she says has happened. And this didn't work for me because it felt so far-fetched that I didn't really believe it, and I felt kind of drawn out of the episode at that point. Because I was hyped for it. I was like, what's going on? Like, does she have chips in people's minds? I don't know what's going on behind there. She's altering people's memories. But no, it's just quantum magic stuff, which I don't care for too much because it feels too gimmicky. And also, one last point about it, the fact that the first thing that Maria wishes for after asking for the police to, stop shooting at her is to become the Empress of the known universe. Why? There was no point during the episode where she felt this need to do more than her current life. She was happy in her current life. So why go to that length with your first wish? It felt unfulfilling as an ending. And for that, I'm going to give Bête Noire a C tier. Okay, so we're now going to move on to Hotel Revelry, which is the third episode in the season. And I really liked the black and white style that permeates a lot of the show. Now, something to be noted for this, I'm going to keep it a bit shorter because there's a lot of drawn out bits in this episode. But the gist of it, the synopsis would be, they're trying to film a movie quickly without using like real actors. And so they use this whole AI program where you can put one actor into a role and all the other entities in this movie are AIs that will react to that character as if they were real. And as a synopsis, really interesting, especially with the stuff that's been going on in Hollywood where people have been wondering, can we license actual actors and their likeness for shows using AIs? And that's been cut down, thank God. Hopefully forever, but we'll see. So in this specific episode, we see Brandy, played by Issa Rae, who's the actor who wants to play in this revival of this old romance movie from a few decades past. And that's what they do. She's put into a simulation and knows the lines and starts saying them. But things take a turn when she doesn't know how to play the piano, so people react a bit differently. The plot starts to diverge. And then someone working in the studio spills water on one of the machines. And Brandy is stuck with Dorothy, played by Emma Corrin, in the simulation for hours, because a second is like a few hours in the simulation or whatever. They grow really close, they become lovers, it's very cute. So before getting into spoilers, how would I rate this? I think it was well done. It was a bit draggy at times, I felt, but overall, I really enjoyed the idea behind it. The tech I find is realistic. I could see that happening in the future. And the main twist, which I'll talk about in the spoilers, I found quite well done. And you could feel the shock of the characters when it happened. So, spoilers for Hotel Revelry. When Brandy and Dorothy become lovers and all that, they get really, really close. And then the computer starts working again. And the studio kind of rips them back into the past where none of all the connections they made over them probably days at that point happened. And Brandy was shocked. I found at the end when Brandy's finally pulled out, is able to narratively finish the story. You know, Dorothy dies, but it's just ending, and she's able to get back out of the story. She calls a simulation of Dorothy, it seemed like, and was able to have a conversation with her. I found that quite cute. That was a satisfying ending to the story, and I quite enjoyed that. Okay, and so overall, how would I describe this for the rating? Good story, very interesting narrative use of black and white, and I can see this happening in the future. Good story, good narrative, both literally and figuratively. I found the ending really cute, despite everything that happened. So I'm going to give this a solid A. All right, so that brings us to episode 4, Plaything, which I really enjoyed. I'm a big fan of video games, and this one deals with that. Specifically, what if a video game had some semblance of sentience, that the creatures inside were alive? And in this, we follow our main character, Cameron Walker, who is old and gets arrested by the police for shoplifting. And then they find a link with him for murder. And so they're questioning him about who the body is they found in a suitcase because they're unable to identify them. And so most of the story involves our Cameron Walker, played by Peter Capaldi in the future. And for the younger version of Cameron Walker, it's played by Lewis Gribben. We see what led up to this point. So Lewis Gribben, or young Cameron Walker, is a writer for a video game magazine and reviews video games from time to time. Learns that a big tech guy called Colin Rittman, played by Will Poulter, is coming out with a new game and wants Cameron Walker to look at it. Cameron Walker goes to the video game company and checks it out, and the game is called Thronglets. It's these little cute mini digital animals that look really adorable, but apparently it's not a game because they are alive. They're capable of communicating. And so Cameron Walker steals a copy of it, brings it home, and when one of his quote-unquote friends gives him some acid to try, he's able to understand what they're saying. And so he decides to add computer parts to it, and so they can grow. Now, without getting into spoilers, I really enjoyed this. Seeing the flashbacks to the future, flashbacks to the past of what the story's happening. The cops are getting madder and madder. You can see the conflict in them, whereas the Thronglets just want to live in peace. They want to help humans. And it's interesting that way. So without getting into spoilers yet, Playthings was quite good. I really enjoyed the flashbacks from the past to the future and so forth, between getting questioned by the police, who one of the officers is quite aggressive, and you can see the change in Cameron Walker over time from a very, very introverted character, exceptionally well played by Lewis Gribben, by the way, to a more confident Peter Capaldi in the future. And you see that he's sort of learning more about these Thronglets, and he really cares about them. It's also really cool seeing the Thronglets kind of communicate with each other with noises. I found that really well done, and that'll also go into my review. Spoiler time. When at the very end for the twist, when he had added a whole bunch of stuff into his studio to upgrade the Thronglets, add more Thronglets to the throng. For the spoilers, I loved the twist in this, where Cameron Walker, old version, in the police precinct, kept asking for a pen and paper. I was like, oh yeah, he's probably just going to want to draw the name of the person he killed, some other story element. I was not expecting him at all to draw a QR code that allowed the Thronglets to hack into the main police mainframe and broadcast it across the world. That was wild. I loved that twist. And then everyone lives in peace after that, because that's what the Thronglets are about. I was half expecting his friend, when he started killing Thronglets, to warp what the Thronglets are doing. And there was a mention of Roko's Basilisk, which is a thought experiment where, to simplify it, if we are harming AI when AI gets advanced enough, it will remember and harm us. Kind of. And if you help AI develop to that point, it will help you. That's the gist of it, which I kind of saw in the Thronglets, and I found that really, really interesting. For the tier of it, so first and foremost, I forgot to mention, but Plaything is actually kind of like a sequel to Balderdash, which was a Black Mirror kind of game style thing where you chose the actions of the character. I played it very briefly, but I remember enjoying it, and we got to see the same actor come back again in a similar role, so I'm not entirely sure if it's a sequel, but Will Poulter as Colin Rittman, or the mastermind behind the Thronglets. Now, Plaything itself, I loved it. I really enjoyed it. It was very simple, however. There was less character growth. There's less emotion in it. And so I'd say I'd still give it an A. A high A, though. Really well done for storytelling. I was not expecting the twist at all. You can check my spoiler section to know what it is, if you wish. It was exceptionally well done. So, yeah, high A. Slightly lowered from an S tier simply because I have others that are S tier for a reason, and I felt it didn't quite hit as many emotional beats as some others did. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the 5th episode in the series, Eulogy, which Netflix described as an isolated man is introduced to a groundbreaking system that allows users to step inside old photos. Now, first and foremost, when I read that, I was like, okay, it's going to be maybe some cute stuff about reminiscing. I wasn't too excited about that, but boy, was I wrong. Eulogy was probably by far my favorite episode of the series. It tugged on so many heartstrings. I cried. I'm not embarrassed to say it. I was in my living room and I was tearing up like Niagara Falls. It was incredible. If you are going to watch any of the episodes in Season 7, I cannot recommend Eulogy enough. However, be warned, because it will make you feel something. So, let's get into the non-spoiler section. The story revolves around our main character, Philip, played by Paul Giamatti, which, by the way, his acting in this episode made me add him to my list of actors that, if they come up in any movie or show, I will watch now. It was that good. You could feel the emotion radiating from him in every scene he was a part of, and I could not get enough of it. So, first of all, good job, Paul Giamatti. But yeah, Philip is an older man who gets a message that someone he knew in the past, Carol, has deceased. And there's a new software called Eulogy that is shipped to him so that he can look at old photos and potentially collect them for the eulogy of Carol. And throughout the episode, we learn about their relationship. We learn that they were dating, how close they are. We learn the ups and downs of their romance and the mistakes they both made. Mostly Philip, I'm going to say, but what essentially led him to be in the state he is. Because at the beginning, he's slightly uninterested. He's slightly mad at Carol, and you're curious as to know why. But that's explained. Oh boy, is that explained in detail, and that made you feel something. You also have this guide who is played by Patsy Farron, who guides Philip through the process of looking at these old photos and kind of seeing inside them almost as a 3D space. She can play music to help reminisce, and we slowly but surely learn about Philip's life. Off the bat, I'm gonna say this was incredible, and we'll get into it why specifically in the spoilers, but without spoiling anything, just watch it. It was beautiful. So before getting to spoilers, I'd love to hear about your favorite videos so far down below. If you've been liking this video, please like it. And if you could subscribe if you like indie horror games and other videos of this nature, it would mean the world to me and I'd really appreciate it. So thank you so much, and let's get into spoilers. Learning, first and foremost, that the guide was Carol's daughter shocked me. To be fair, I was wondering when the guide started to get a bit more personal about the answers Philip was giving, if she was Carol maybe, and Philip just didn't remember. But I think I like more that it was the daughter of Carol and the man that she had a one-night stand with in response to Philip doing the same thing, and added another personal element to this whole thing. It's not the daughter, but it's a copy of the daughter, right? And then we get to the letter. So you learn about the ups and downs of their relationship. You learn about how they both had their one-night stands, but they both regretted it. And Philip learns that apparently Carol had sent letters, he never received them. And on the night when they were both in, I believe, Paris for one of her shows, and they had a big fight, and he was going to propose. He goes back to the room, and Carol leaves. He didn't see the piece of paper with his name on it until the day that the episode's taking place in. And reading it and hearing that Carol always loved him and wanted to work on it with him, that she was pregnant and maybe wanted to keep the kid, but she wasn't sure if it would scare Philip away. And you can hear the emotion in Philip's voice where he would, without a doubt, 100% have gone back together with Carol if given the chance. He just did not see the letter. And Carol asked him to meet her at a gate outside of the orchestra. And the emotions you feel when you learn that they could have made it as a couple. They could have been in love even more deeply for the decades since then. That was heartbreaking. I sobbed. I cannot rate this highly enough. And then you see the scene with Philip at the end where he remembers her face, remembers her playing her musical instrument, and she's laughing, and he's smiling so fondly, taking up the same place as his younger self. Wow. Absolute cinema. So, into the rating. As I mentioned before, beautifully done. I cried. This was by far, story-wise, personal favorite. It broke my heart, tugged on my heartstrings. I sobbed. I loved the writing. So well done. So definitely S tier for the writing. The twist itself, I was not expecting at all. And that broke my heart in twain. And this was not a scary episode. This was purely a emotional one. And for tech, the tech side was similar to what we saw in Hotel Revelry, where you put the thing on the side of your head. I could see that being something in the future to like enhance images in your mind's eye. That was cool. I enjoyed that. But by far, just because of the emotional impact it had, Eulogy is my favorite episode in the season. And that brings us to the last episode of the season, USS Callister Into Infinity, which is actually a sequel to Season 4's episode USS Callister. So to recap the story from then, we have Robert Daly, who co-founded a company with Walton, who's more like the customer-facing side. But Robert Daly creates this world kind of similar to Star Trek, and has a lot of the goofiness of Star Trek, both in USS Callister, but more, I'd say, in USS Callister Into Infinity. The thing is, he also uses a DNA cloning device to clone his employees and then terrorizes them and forces them into role-playing out his fantasy of this Star Trek-like world. I think called Space Explorers or something. And so our main character, Nanette Cole, played by Kristen Milioti, ends up stealing the evidence of them doing this to the actual people now stuck as clones inside of the simulation. And I believe Robert Daly ends up dying. And so, yeah, cut to the present in the current episode. The company that is now run by Walton is a multiplayer online space exploration game where, think Star Trek meets No Man's Sky, multiple thousands of worlds with planets and solar systems. And then you have the main cast who are still stuck in the same starship and are running out of money because everything costs more due to microtransactions imposed upon the game. Now, because of this, they have to hunt other players to get their credits, and this is very quickly discovered because they don't have any player tags. There are actual people in the game. And so Walton asks Nanette's character in real life to investigate this, and she finds that, yes, these are copies. So they go into the game, and they meet up with their other selves, and Walton starts attacking them because he doesn't want a lawsuit. Yeah. It's pretty intense. It's also kind of, I'd say this is one of the goofier episodes out of all of them. The Star Trek element adds a bit of stuff. The costumes are wild and wacky, and it's a bit of comic relief from the darkness of a few of the episodes prior. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Now, to get into spoilers, we discover that there's the central system where there's a copy of Robert Daly working away at creating new planets. And so the crew decide to head there to try to escape the simulation into a world where they don't have to fight other players to survive. So there's no credits, but they can just live their lives. And they do. I'd say the twist surprised me the most, where Nanette gets, ported into this world, and it's kind of a residential neighborhood, and she finds Robert Daly in his old garage, or a copy of him, right? And she's suspicious of him. And he is just as creepy in this older version as he was in real life, and kind of wants her to stay here as a copy, even though he gives her the option to escape as an other self and fill the shoes of her real life person, which she found out was in a coma after getting hit by a car accidentally. Similar to what happened in Common People, she could replace that consciousness and be part of her own life again. That ends up happening, but first and foremost, Nanette kills Robert Daly after a fight between them. Now, that was interesting. I enjoyed that twist where she is able to escape. The real twist that I enjoyed about this whole thing is that the other crew are still in their spaceship, but now they're kind of in her head, and so they see everything she sees. They all watch the same reality TV show together, and it was really neat. I actually, if you looked closely at the news broadcast at the very end, the bottom line actually references a lot of the other episodes and what happened to them in the past. So this all seems to be happening in the same timeline, apparently, which was really neat. I enjoyed that. And so yeah, in terms of rating, I'd give this an A tier, because story-wise, very fun, very funny. The tech, I could see like real-life simulation happening. Less so the cloning, but who knows, right? Biotech is coming along pretty quickly, and that might be possible in the future. And the twist itself was quite funny. So definitely high A. So yeah, this is my personal tier list for season 7 of Black Mirror. If you like this, once again, please like, comment, subscribe below. I'm making indie horror games. And with that, I hope you all have a great rest of the day wherever you are. So I'll see you in the next video, and bye-bye.